So something as well on the flip side, talking about the young men, I could say it's definitely something of the millennial generation. The millennial generation. I would kind of even split the generation into two halves. I think the younger millennials, of which I would be a part of, that are a little bit more awake to the issues that millennials face in regards to, we can even see peers who are just 5 to 10 years in front of us and see the amount of debt that they're in and see the fact that they haven't actually made a lot of career progress. And so a lot of us really pumped the brakes and started cutting back, living below our means, and stopped living off of the credit card, and stopped using debt as a way to make ourselves look fake rich, as Dave Ramsey would put it. But there is still a large portion of uh, millennials that really suffer from the Peter Pan syndrome, and they really struggle with growing up and taking on that responsibility. I know a few different men who are working careers that pay them next to nothing, and they are in debt up to their eyeballs from student loans. And although they have a job in the career path they chose, it pays them next to nothing, and they don't seem to have any real understanding that many of them are being rejected by women for not having their finances in order, not being ready to actually be a provider. And so um, many of these men don't seem to understand that as a single guy, you can work an extra part-time job to put away that extra money to attack your debt. But there's just this desire to remain in Neverland and to not grow up. So I'm curious what kind of advice you guys would give to the individual who fits that mold. Another individual I know is actually really well off financially, but they still live with their parents and they are not pursuing marriage. For example, they say that they want to get married, but they don't want to not live with their parents. They just kind of want to make that transition once they're married. And I think that's another indicator of sort of not fully growing up. And I think that that's going to be reflected in the dating scene. And I think that's going to hinder that individual. So if any of you can speak to that and kind of just the advice that you would give to those young men who are refusing to grow up.
Read, read C.R. Wiley books.
Yeah, I've got a lot of young people in my church, a lot of young married couples, a lot of even single people, and I almost every day am interacting with people who are already kind of looking for answers. But I wonder, of course, I'm at a place where people have already kind of woken up. But how do we get someone who hasn't woken up to wake up? That's a different matter. And there comes a point sometimes where I just think somebody kind of just has to slam hard against reality, and it shakes them up. Uh, these guys you've just described, maybe there's nothing we can do but apart from pray for them. And I think the thing maybe we ought to do is focus in on working with those who already are asking good questions. And there are a lot of guys out there who are. That's why I'm so encouraged. I see them everywhere. And so they're aspiring for more, and they've rejected the scripts that the secular culture has provided. They don't believe in them anymore. And that's why I'm encouraged. I think in my mind, you kind of the canary in the mind are young men. And when young men are departing from the sort of the culture's scripts, it's just indication that we're about to make a big change, a big shift. Young women generally defer to the culture's scripts. That's why you see that divergence in that graph. So this is the paradox. John Stuart Mill criticized women in the 19th century because he thought that they were too conservative and they would just always sort of just go along with whatever the authority figure said. And he was correct. The problem in our time is all the authority figures are liberal, and the girls are just doing what they're expected to do, what they're being told to do. What they need is young men who are blazing a trail, doing something that's culturally kind of it's outside of the sort of the script, but is exciting. So, one of the things I say to young guys is when they're interested in pursuing a woman, the thing I tell them is you got to be pursuing something besides the woman for her to get on your motorcycle. So if you drive up to it and you say, "Hey babe, jump on, I'm going someplace fun," then she's like, "Yeah, I want to be part of that,"
Yeah.
and she jumps on. But if you're just like, "Hey, it's all about you, babe," well, you're just riding in circles, just around me. Is that all that's going on? So a lot of the time, you've got a moving object draws attention. So if you're moving somewhere, you're going to attract attention. And if you've got your act together and you're competent, there are going to be girls that say, "Hey, where's that guy going? And maybe I want to go with him."
Great point.
Well, to piggyback on that, I do think it's a matter of recovering aesthetics. This occurred to me a couple of years ago. The local BCM was having pastors come in to talk about hot button issues. And it was kind of, it was recent enough where they were having the meetings outside and they were attracting hecklers at the university and things like that. And so they couldn't find a pastor to talk about homosexuality. And so the director was like, "Hey, would you?" And I was like, "Yeah, I will." And as I was preparing for that, I realized that the kids who are coming to BCM probably can't lie to themselves that the Bible isn't clear on this. They have enough exposure to Scripture to know the Bible's unambiguous. What we're having to actually fight is the vision the Bible presents captivating. And it's sort of similar to what CR was saying there. The idea of life with this man has to become captivating. A life with a single man with children monogamously for the rest of life has to become aesthetically pleasing in a way that eclipses hookup culture, economic independence, girl boss fantasies. But it also has to be true for men, because with young men, now we're a little bit past this, but just a few years ago with guys who were Noah's age, they were terrified of doing anything to try to engage with a woman. They couldn't tell if this young lady was 16 years old or 32 because everybody dressed alike. They, whatever their entree into the conversation was, if it was misunderstood, could destroy them forever. Right. And porn was a really easy way to just be like, I can have what I need without having to put all that risk on the line.
Yeah.
We're starting to see guys who don't want to do that now. But for both of them, there had to be an aesthetic recovery. And I'll just testify real quick. So I've got a chance to do this with Mr. Wiley here. I grew up in the capital of a family that did a bunch of the stuff we're talking about now, but I was foolish and ungrateful. So because my dad wasn't a man of letters and my grandfather wasn't, I thought I can transcend this. I'm thankful for them, but I'm gonna actually take the family further. So my dad can't parse Greek, and gosh, what's he have to offer? So I'm off to academy, right? And I start to realize what you're saying with some of these scripts are being bankrupt. And I start, the cliche is my dad gets smarter every year I get older.
Sure.
Right. And so what really galvanized, finally kind of put the stake in that and really changed the way I was doing stuff was reading Man of the House.
Oh,
and I was reading through that going, I grew up in this. This is my homeland. What am I doing? And I made a dead sprint. I still live and help with the family enterprises and stuff, but my time is spent trying to glean as much from my dad, my uncles as I can get now, because I wasted a decade not getting it. And I think when those guys die, this is another thing about the boomers. When they die, Connor, you said where your generation is lacking a technical expertise.
Yeah, we're hosed.
Well, with the boomers, when they die, it's going to be like losing the Library of Alexandria.
Yeah.
We're going to have practical experience that just washes out into eternity, and we have no access to it. And so what I would say, recover that the aesthetic appeal of these things, try to help other people do that. And for those who have access to people like the local church does, right? We can be like, hey, married people, come look at them. They've been married a while. Or you just got living older relatives who will let you drink up as much as you can and try to start rebuilding the ruins, start building a bridge from that generation into the next, because somebody's going to have to start fixing it.